Research by the Pietermaritzburg Economic Justice and Dignity Group shows the cost of the average household food basket has gone up. According to the research, the recent fare hikes and annual electricity tariff increases present a further threat to the ability of citizens to put food on the table. Joining me now is the organisation's Mervyn Abrahams. Thank you very much for your time. So we've seen there the household affordability index showing that some food items have shown drastic price increases just over the last month. And just to give an example, a price increase of 66% for onions. In addition, those annual price increases for electricity and the proposed tariff increases for taxi fares. How do families juggle all these increases when unemployment is rising and when those who do have stable jobs have not seen pay increases in some time?
So, Annelie, what women tell us in the townships where we gather most of our data is that there are two ways in which households, in fact, deal with this predicament. They either cut back on the amount of food that they eat, or secondly, they have to start borrowing money. And of course, they have to borrow money from money lenders at quite a high interest rate in order to merely put food on the table. So on the one hand, households cutting back on food affects their level of nutrition. It also affects their level of immunity if they should pick up the coronavirus, or else they get trapped in a debt burden. So those are the two options that households have.
This index also shows data shows us how people budget in terms of where they choose to spend their money first.
Yes. So in a normal context, in terms of a household budget, so if a household has one worker who earns a national minimum wage, then the first thing the household has to prioritize, of course, is the transport for that worker so that that job is maintained. Secondly, the households prioritize electricity because they need electricity for food, cooking, for lighting, as also a security issue, particularly for women. And so our research shows that currently those two expenses take up about 34% of a national minimum wage. Our research shows that it takes up about 50% of the national minimum wage. It is set at currently at 1,774 Rand. With the contemplated increases, and of course we're not 100% sure by how much the taxi fare would increase, but there's been talk of between 4 Rand and 5 Rand. And we know that in Pietermaritzburg, the electricity will increase by 6.9%. And in many municipalities across South Africa, it will be 6% or higher. So then we are talking essentially of about 61% of a national minimum wage going on purely these two expenses. So whatever money is left over, of course, then goes on to food and on to rent and other such expenses. So households are in a deep financial crisis.
Mervyn, we saw the Finance Minister Tito Mboweni deliver his special adjustment budget today, and while that address contained lots of figures, lots of financial terminology, do you think the Minister's address spoke to the concerns of ordinary South Africans who would be juggling with these very difficult kinds of decisions, having to spend up to 50% of their monthly income on transport alone and sitting with an empty larder?
I was fairly disappointed. I was really disappointed that the supplementary budget didn't speak directly to the context of people. So one example is that the social grant, so the funds to the Department of Social Development will be decreased from 50 billion to 41 billion. So secondly, we are talking about the old age, the increase, the coronavirus increase that was given for the old age pension, which was very welcomed. but it was 250 Rand, and that will stop at the end of October. Now, we have seen the cost of our food basket from the beginning of March to the beginning of June increase by 268 Rand. So should that 250 be taken away at the end of October, then households will have to cut back on what they are able to buy, because the food price increases have already absorbed that increase. And so it's going to be really difficult times ahead, both for the country, but in particularly for the 60% of South Africans who earn a national minimum wage, who earn 3,500 Rand or less, or depend on social grants.
Right, thank you very much for that oversight, Pietermaritzburg Economic Justice and Dignity Group's Mervyn Abrahams.